During the Vietnam War, I served as a radio operator in the Army. Fresh out of high school, I was clueless about the war's realities. The journey to Vietnam was long and tense. As soon as we landed, the humid air hit me, and the stench of wet soil and decaying vegetation filled my nostrils. We were loaded onto buses that took us to our barracks. The drive was silent, except for the murmurs of anxious soldiers. Our drill sergeants were relentless, taunting us with stories of past battles and lost comrades. My first night was uneventful, but the tension was palpable. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the camp. I lay on my bunk, listening to the sounds of the jungle. Insects buzzed, and distant animal cries echoed through the night. I tried to sleep, but the weight of the situation kept me awake. We were in enemy territory, and danger lurked everywhere. The next morning, we were introduced to our duties. I was responsible for managing communications between our unit and other troops. The equipment was heavy, and I had to carry a large radio box on my back, along with other supplies. My unit had recently lost their previous operator to a landmine, and I was quickly integrated into their tight-knit group. Our first patrol was nerve-wracking. We moved through dense jungle, the foliage so thick that visibility was minimal. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig set my nerves on edge. We walked in a single file, our senses heightened, ready for any sign of the enemy. The air was thick with humidity, and sweat poured down our faces. The tension was almost unbearable. Suddenly, gunfire erupted. The sound was deafening, and we hit the ground, returning fire in the direction of the shots. The chaos was overwhelming, and it felt like an eternity before the shooting stopped. We advanced cautiously, finding 3 dead Viet Cong soldiers. The sight of their lifeless bodies was shocking. They were young, just like us, with families and lives. The reality of war hit me hard in that moment. Days turned into weeks, and I became accustomed to the violence. Each day brought new challenges and new losses. I saw many of my fellow soldiers dying in painful and horrific ways. The jungle was unforgiving, and the enemy was relentless. Despite the fear and the constant threat of death, we formed strong bonds. We relied on each other for survival, and that camaraderie was what kept us going. One day, I was approached by my NCO, who informed me that an intelligence officer named Douglas wanted to speak with me. Douglas was an older man, in his late 50s, with a calculated and intimidating demeanor. Even our commanding officers seemed to become a yes-man in his presence. Douglas informed me that I was being reassigned to his unit as an RTO. I didn't want to leave my unit, but orders were orders. We boarded a Huey and flew to a heavily wooded area. The atmosphere was strange and unsettling. The soldiers there didn't seem like regular troops. They were emotionless, almost robotic. I tried to engage them in conversation, but they ignored me, giving me only cold, empty stares. The air was thick with tension and a sense of impending doom. Douglas led me to a small hut and instructed me to wait there. Curiosity got the better of me, and I ventured out to explore. In a larger tent, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. On a makeshift table were 6 murky containers, each holding the severed head of a guerrilla fighter. Wires and tubes protruded from the heads, and a green liquid seemed to be keeping them alive. Their eyes and mouths twitched, as if they were still conscious. Douglas caught me and angrily reprimanded me for snooping. He sent me back to the hut, and I could feel his eyes boring into my back as I walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of those heads haunted me. I tried to make sense of what I had seen, but it was beyond comprehension. The next morning, I woke up in a medical unit with broken ribs and a fractured collarbone. I had no memory of what had happened after seeing the heads. The doctors told me I had been found unconscious and brought in for treatment. I never saw Douglas or those soldiers again. To this day, I don't know what they were doing or why they needed those severed heads. The experience left me with more questions than answers and a lingering sense of unease that I can never shake off.